Hi, I'm Ben Hart, and this is Thailand. So, for those who are sort of aware of this channel, occasionally I make these what I call sit-down videos. For those of you who are unaware, all of the videos I've ever done on this channel are extemporaneous. I don't usually rely on bullet points or notes. Anybody that's watched the channel for some time, will know that we do cite sources quite a little bit, but as far as what I'm actually saying, I'm usually speaking extemporaneously, as I am right now. But if you see me look down, I'm looking at some notes. I'm making this video not to make a rant like I've made in other videos regarding what's going on with a lot of different things here, but most notably what we're talking about in this video is this OECD stuff and this basically, in my opinion, undue foreign influence on Thailand in both the banking and tax sectors, and this push by what can only be described as supranational powers, most notably the World Economic Forum, the so-called Davos set, these sort of European oligarchic interests that seem to take it upon themselves to run around the world and tell us all what to do and tell us all that, you know, we need to do certain things just because. That seems to be their modus operandi. And to be clear, one of the reasons I'm also making this video is because I view this OECD thing as just as pernicious, and quite frankly, the parallels to the way this is being sort of foisted upon Thailand are very similar to what can only be described as the COVID scam that we have all had to endure for this nearly 5 years now as of the time of this video. And when I say a COVID scam, it's coming to light. This is not some kind of arguable thing, okay? We now know that supranational organizations like the WEF ran around telling everybody that they had to go out and be vaccinated, quote unquote, which wasn't even the definition of what this experimental gene therapy treatment was when the CDC decided to change the definition to whatever it is now, which allows for this vaccine to be considered a vaccine. Point I'm trying to make is we were all, by the media, herded, shepherded, sherped, bamboozled by color of law, by, quite honestly, sophistry and logic, and by the media just presenting everything as a given fact. That was a modus operandi of COVID. And for those who don't remember it, I made the videos. I'm on record. I remember in the deep darkness of COVID here in Thailand having to read the Nuremberg Code. You know, and I'll tell you, I went to sleep a little uneasily that night because I didn't know what was going on. And quite frankly, I'm tired of this. You know, I'm not afraid anymore, is the point I'm trying to make. And I've been receiving emails and stuff from people, all this kind of ominous language about foreign tax authorities and I might have some problems. Don't threaten me, all right? I haven't done anything wrong, and it's not wrong to be worried about your adoptive country being overrun by foreign interlopers who do not have the country's national interest nor best interest at heart, okay? I'm not interested in this. I watch this nonsense with COVID. I watch psychologists and psychiatrists. One of them I called the beauty queen shrink here in Thailand, telling us that they knew everything about how communicable diseases worked, and nobody could ever explain to me why psychiatrists were the ones with the tip of the spear, the tip of the spear of that narrative. It made no sense. It's like with this OECD stuff. Everything you see talked about is, oh, it's just happening. The banks have now sent out these FATCA forms, even though FATCA only pertains to Americans overseas. And now, oh, this common reporting requirement or comprehensive reporting requirement, whatever they're calling this acronym, CRS. Who signed on to this? We were told not 6 months ago it was going to take 5 years to go through this and that it wasn't a foregone conclusion. Where is Parliament in this? You know, where are the laws that say you get to share Thai's private banking information with international organizations, non-Thais? Where's the banking privacy in that? The basic banking privacy. And not this, oh, there could be money laundering. Do you know money laundering was a created term in 1987? Before that, it was just called, it's your own money and you're allowed to do with it whatever you want. You know, I'm tired of all these euphemisms being used to destroy the most basic liberties of people that just want to live their lives. Okay, that's what's bothering me. And again, this is totalitarian surveillance by outsiders, by people outside of Thailand. These are agencies. Again, this was my biggest problem with the WHO. If you go back into March 20th, we did the videos at the time. The folks, the powers that be at the time here in Thailand did not want to come under the WHO's pandemic definition, which they changed effectively when they called it a pandemic in order to shut everything down. Thailand did it very, very reluctantly. I remember that. And if you recall, the first emergency decrees only operated in 2-week increments. Okay? This was totalitarian, supranational grasping at people's individual liberties in multiple countries around the world, and I'm sick and tired of it. Okay? This OECD stuff is nonsense. These foreign tax collectors coming into Thailand telling people how Thai law works with regard to taxes? What is this? Are we being invaded? You know, it sounds to me like almost like the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. You know, Thailand doesn't need this. It just doesn't. Meanwhile, you know, this OECD, it's all part of this Yellen thing. Yellen came up with this, Janet Yellen, Treasury Secretary, former head of the Federal Reserve. You know, people talk sometimes about Biden, you know, Yellen going over to China and, I don't know, tripping on mushrooms or whatever it was she did when she went over there. I don't know what's going on with this gal, but, you know, her notion of a global minimum tax, and our former prime minister here in Thailand before he was ousted, talking about the global minimum tax, and we all have some inherent responsibility to pay tax just by dint of the fact that we were born. No, there is tax liability, there's tax jurisdiction associated with whether or not you're in a country long enough and under certain circumstances to be subject to tax. Okay? Being born is not the original sin of the globalism. That means we all have to pay money because we were born. That's nonsense. Okay, that's all a minimum tax, a global minimum tax is. And by the way, you know, Thailand is the last bulwark, the domino that didn't fall against communism. And I mean, the notion of a global minimum tax, that sounds like something straight out of the Comintern in 1968. I mean, this is nonsense, okay? And meanwhile, again, why are foreign agents, literal agents of foreign tax authorities coming into Thailand, flouting Thai law regarding non-professionals, non-Thais in this country, discussing matters pertaining to tax jurisdiction, tax law in Thailand? Why are they being allowed to do this? And this is all just being touted in the media as if it's a foregone conclusion. We're all supposed to just get on board and go along with this. Meanwhile, you can't transfer money in Thailand without 16 forms of ID. All the things that were the reasons I moved to this great country are being destroyed by outsiders. Period. That's what's going on. This isn't hyperbole. I view this I view this as an attack on Thailand. It's a very subtle one. It's a very, for lack of a better term, subversive one, but it's a foreign power trying to gain the ability to take money off of Thailand. And as I've discussed in other videos, the way that they do this is they align and harmonize the laws so that then they can create, if you read a book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman, they go into all the details of how this works. They align the laws, and then they say, oh, you have to give mandatory foreign aid, which is never going to be paid back, but you're on the hook for the debt. It's not unlike this digital wallet nonsense we just heard about, where we were supposed to go 500 billion baht into debt in order to get some kind of digital magic bean money that would then track and trace all of our transactions across Thailand, I guess for all time. How is this not viewed as a hostile force toward Thailand, or at least as a hostile movement toward Thailand? Because that's all I can see here. Let me check my notes here. In any event, another thing, a good point to bring up. One of my sort of heroes of the internet ether, the YouTube space, whatever you want to call it, and really a great writer is a guy named James Rickards. And Mr. Rickards, I read his so-called Four Horsemen book about currency, which was fantastic work, by the way. I can't remember which book it's in, but where it describes Thailand going from 1997 to 2007 to 2017 and how everything changed. And I lived through the latter half of that here in Bangkok primarily, and watching how things changed from 97 when yet again Thailand was attacked by supranational banking interests and we nearly watched our entire country be destroyed financially, which I sit here and wonder if that's not the desire here. As I talked about in another video, one of the things that they've recently said about, oh, we need more taxes is, oh, we spent all this money on the digital, on the handout. What kind of nonsense is that? Before all these folks came in and told us we had to do all this stuff, we didn't have a problem. Our debt to GDP ratio was pretty solid. We had a good budget. We were moving forward. Things were getting going again after reopening the economy, which, by the way, that's another good point of COVID, is they shut down all the economy because we say so. You think they're not going to do that when they have total control of our bank accounts? You know, but meanwhile, okay, we were getting better. We were coming back. We were turning things around. And then this crew comes in and just starts giving away all the money. And now we're going to have to go into more debt. And they're saying we got to go after all these, we got to go after foreigners and all of this taxes. We're going to chase the foreigners away with these policies. They're not going to want to invest here. The folks that just come here and want to live here and just spend their money day to day here, they're not going to want to be here. If they think that they're going to have to be under a constant IRS or whatever OECD mandated regime where they got to fill out umpteen different forms every year just to live their lives, nobody's going to want to come here for that. Why would you? That's what we're all leaving from the West. That's what I left some near 20 years ago because I saw what was coming. We don't need this here in Thailand. That said, I brought up Jim Rickards for a reason, because Rickards once talked, or has talked multiple times, that in Washington, at least in Washington politics, you can't go against something without at least having an alternative. What do we mean in this context? Well, okay, fine. OECD. Well, if we're not going to do, you know, and it's always sort of mush heads, midwits, that say stuff like, well, if we're not going to do that, what are we going to do? How about we just stay the way we are? That's the first answer. But okay, if you absolutely need something to replace it in your weird false dialectic, then there is a solution. And in fact, our PM, in my opinion, rather wisely came up with one. And that is, we don't need OECD. Why don't we just do an APEC-wide thing where we set it up on our own out here in the Pacific? Why do we need all of these Europeans and those people that are all better than us and never cease to condescendingly remind us of how much better they are than us? Why do we need these folks? Asia-Pacific knows how to handle its business. Indo-Pacific knows how to handle its business. We can do it out here. And by the way, we've been showing them up in every metric that counts out here in the East. We are taking names and kicking you-know-what around here. Okay? The West is the one that is collapsing. That's why they're trying to get their claws into Thailand so they can take our national wealth to buoy themselves a little bit longer until they find their next victim. That's what's happening here. So as Rickards points out, you need to come up with an alternative. Fine, I have an alternative. The PM has an alternative, and good for her. This APEC-wide notion. We don't need this OECD. We don't need these outsiders telling us what's up. Thailand can set her own course, as she always has. That said, I got some more sort of notes here. Yeah, a big problem I have with this is this whole OECD thing. We're sharing all the Thais' financial data with outsiders, with foreigners. That's what OECD does. As we've talked, common reporting standards. Everybody's going to be... Who's signed off on this in Thailand? Again, where's Parliament? And can we please, I'm begging Thailand, I'm begging. I pray, can we pump the brakes? Can we let cooler heads prevail? Let's let our Parliament look this stuff over and promulgate laws as and when necessary, as they have forever here. Why are we being pushed into the abyss by a media that, quite honestly, up to this point, I think has been, at best, disingenuous, and by a bunch of foreigners who would like nothing better to just fleece us? This isn't good, Thailand. I pray cooler heads see this for what it is. And again, we're running around scaring the crap. Excuse the language. We're just scaring the heck out of foreigners here in Thailand. We're scaring them with this FATCA stuff, these banks are just unilaterally sending out forms. Where's the law for all of this? Since when do the banks just get to dictate to everybody how the world works without any kind of due process? But meanwhile, it's scaring the crap out of the expat community. Again, excuse the language, but this isn't good, okay? And people that are looking to come here and invest, they're now starting to kind of go, none of this is good, and it's all being rolled out very quickly, much like COVID, to sort of get us under it, and then we all just have to put up with it. Well, no, it ends here, it ends now. I'm tired of being scared of you unaccountable, shadowy bureaucrats. I'm tired of being told I need to be afraid of the agents of some foreign tax authority here in Thailand. Go away. This is a sovereign nation. These people want to live here in peace and just make their living. Moving on. Yeah, again, I don't have much else to say, I guess, but pump the brakes. Please, Thailand, let's pump the brakes on this. Okay? This has been flouted. It's been sort of thrown out there into the narrative as if it's a foregone conclusion, and then it's going to happen super duper fast. Well, as Barry Kenyon pointed out down in the Pattaya Mail with a direct quote from the finance minister himself, after all of that hyperbole and basically that person was put on the spot and asked, hey, when is this happening? The quote was, it's going to take years. What happened to that? And meanwhile, what happened to, we're looking into this? Not this is a foregone conclusion. Who said they wanted to join OECD? And for that matter, frankly, BRICS too. I don't think Thailand needs to be a part of any of this. I think Thailand should do what she's always done. Maintain her independent course and do as her national interest dictates. And meanwhile, I think it's very laudable by the PM coming up with an alternative that, quite frankly, operates more in Thailand's interest. You want to do some of this stuff, do it through APEC, okay? Sell crazy someplace else. We are all stocked up here in Thailand. Back over there in Europe, you want to have all this crazy, constant reporting, mandatory compliance, You want to waste your time with that nonsense? Fine, you be my guest. I was listening to a guy, Peter St. Onge, I think is his name. He's a financial commentator on Twitter, was talking about, I think he said, $364 billion in capital in America goes toward all of this tax and banking compliance. How much wasted resources is that? Is that what we want in Thailand? Hundreds of billions of dollars just going into just paperwork for nothing, for no end? And look, I've gone through the naturalization process. I've been here 17 years. I have the fervor of the converted. I know Thailand has a bureaucracy. It doesn't particularly bother me that Thailand has a bureaucracy. But this is not Thailand's bureaucracy we're talking about. This is some foreign bureaucracy. If this was the British East India Company, is this what we would want? But because it's a supranational G7 banking cabal or whatever it is, it's supposed to be all fun and games, or it's supposed to be all sweetness and light, at least according to the media, who I have to ask, are you being induced to create this narrative and maintain it? Because I don't see why you're presenting this as a foregone conclusion rather than something that Thailand should be looking at, pondering if it's international interest, and then deciding to accept or reject it. Which I think it's self-evident we should reject it because it operates against all of Thailand's autonomy, not to mention the privacy of her citizens with regard to their banking information. And then at the end of the day, what do we get out of it? The ability to give out foreign aid which doesn't get paid back, that then is collateralized against us as a nation? That's what we get? That's the big pot of gold at the end of this compliance rainbow? Again, I didn't really want this to become a rant. I was kind of hoping I'd stay calm, but clearly I'm not able to do that on this subject. What I'm hoping, what I'm praying, is that cooler heads prevail in policy circles here in Thailand, and our policymakers here in Thailand do what they're supposed to do. Make policy in the national interest of the kingdom and the people of Thailand. Please, I beg you, as a foreigner who loves this place and became one of you and knows what he escaped, we can't have this. This will be bad for everyone and everything that I can foresee here.